In matters of faith, many people occupy what I tend to call the Borderlands. Many give church and Christians a wide berth, yet still linger in these borderlands because they cannot set aside the feeling that there must be a spiritual reality out there. Maybe this comes from some epiphany when witnessing something beautiful, or a sense of longing that gives a nudge towards something that must exist beyond the everyday routine of life. But what? The big issues in our lives, the career changes, the birth of a child, the death of a loved one, they all raise questions with no easy answers. Is there a God? A life after death? Is religious faith only a crutch or a path to something authentic? I also meet Christians who find it difficult to articulate why they believe as they do. Perhaps they absorbed faith as part of their upbringing, or perhaps they simply find church an uplifting place to visit on weekends. But if asked to explain their faith, often they don't know what to say. Well, what would I say? Does religious faith make sense in the world of the internet and ever-increasing technology? Have we figured out the basics of life, or is some important ingredient missing? To me, there's this great divide separating belief and unbelief, and this great divide reduces down to one simple question. Is the visible world around us all there is? Those unsure of that question, whether they approach it from standing a little closer to belief or to unbelief, those people live in the borderlands. They wonder whether faith in an unseen world is wishful thinking. Does faith delude us into seeing a world that isn't really there and doesn't exist? Or does it reveal the existence of a world we cannot see without it? I lived in the borderlands for a very long time, in most of my life probably. I think one has to begin with the visible world, the one around us, that all of us inhabit. What rumors of another world might it convey? From there I can look at the apparent contradictions. If this is God's world, why doesn't it look more like it? Why is this planet so messed up? Finally, I can consider how two worlds, visible and invisible, natural and supernatural, might interact and affect our daily lives. Does the Christian way represent the best life on this earth, or represent a kind of unresolved limbo for eternity? I am fully aware of all the reasons not to believe. So then why do I believe? Well, let's go a little further, shall we? Sometime last year, I remember an exhibit that played at my city's local science center. They had this remarkable exhibition called Body Worlds. A German professor had invented this vacuum process called plastination, which replaces individual cells of the human body with brightly colored resins and epoxies. As a result, they can preserve a human body, either whole or stripped away to reveal its inner parts and display the cadaver in an eerily lifelike pose. The exhibition's signature piece is a man, all muscles, tendons, and ligaments, his face peeled like a grape, with the entire rubbery length of skin, flayed but intact, kind of draped over his arm like wearing a raincoat. It definitely gives way to a very morbid fascination to anyone viewing this exhibit. You see all these preserved bodies artfully arranged in these educational displays. You see people sitting down, you see athletes in mid-activity, people assuming their normal poses to demonstrate the wonders of the skeletal and muscular systems. One display hung the pink organs of the digestive system on a wire frame, descending from the tongue down to the stomach, liver, pancreas, intestines, colon, with, of course, educational information listed on the plaque or given to you by a tour guide. Essentially, the Body Worlds exhibit highlighted for me two distinct ways of looking at the world. One takes apart, while the other seeks to connect and put together. We live in an age that excels at the first and wavers at the second. So the cadavers, dissected to expose bones, nerves, muscles, tendons, ligaments, blood vessels, and internal organs, demonstrate our ability to break something down, in this case the human being, into its basic parts. We can reduce all kinds of complex systems these days. The solar system, the weather patterns, and even the human body into simpler parts in order to understand how things work. We reduce into parts, but can we fit together the whole? We can replace the cells of a human body with colored plastic or slice it into 1,000 parts, but we have a much harder time agreeing on what a human person is. Where did we come from? Why are we here? Will any part of us survive death? The people on display at Body Worlds, do they endure as immortal souls somewhere in another dimension, perhaps peering whimsically at the line of tourists gawking at their plastinated bodies? And what of an invisible world, a world that cannot be dissected and put on display at a gallery? Knowing the parts doesn't necessarily help us understand the whole. I see such dangers in our modern point of view. For one thing, this reductionism, you can call it, has the unfortunate effect of, reducing things. Science offers a map of the world. Think of something like a topographical map where it marks hills and valleys. Yet no map of 2 dimensions, let alone 3 dimensions, can give the full picture, and none can possibly capture the experience of being there. Encounter trumps reduction, right? And more importantly, the reducer's approach allows no place for an invisible world. It takes for granted that the world of matter is the sum total of existence. We can measure and photograph and catalog it. We can use technology to break it down into its smallest particles. Looking at the parts, we judge them the whole of reality. Of course, though, an invisible God cannot be examined or tested. Most definitely, God cannot be quantified or reduced. As a result, many people in societies like ours, advanced in technology as they are, go about their daily lives assuming God does not exist. They stop short at the world that can be reduced and analyzed, their ears sealed against any unconfirmed reports of another world. As famous classic author Leo Tolstoy said, materialists mistake what limits life for life itself. No society in history has really attempted to live without a belief in the sacred, at least not until the modern West. Such a leap has consequences that I think we are really only beginning to recognize. We now live in a state of perpetual confusion about the big questions that have always engaged the human race. Questions of meaning, purpose, and morality.